broadcasting around the world. This is the Hard Asset Money Show. Your wealth, your money, your future. Serious talk about what's happening and how you profit. Hosted by Christian Briggs. Follow him on X at BMC_HAM. Live in 3, 2, 1.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday signed a law to create a regulatory regime for dollar-pegged cryptocurrencies known as stablecoins, a milestone that could pave the way for the digital assets to become an everyday way of making payments and move money. Joining us now to discuss is Steve Hanke, professor of applied economics at Johns Hopkins University. Steve is also the author of the book Making Money Work: How to Rewrite the Rules of Our Financial System. Also joining us is economist Christian Briggs, CEO of Hard Asset Management. Okay, so good afternoon to you both. Steve, I'll start with you today. Can you break down for us and explain the Genius Act, what it means for the future of digital assets and cryptocurrencies?
Well, that act plus another one are really setting up an uneven playing field between cryptocurrencies and banks. And my contention all along is if it walks like a bank and talks like a bank, it is a bank. And that's what cryptos are. And we have all kinds of regulations and legislation that affects banks. And we don't need anything new, but we have something new. And the something new has been paid for by the crypto lobby. So it sets up an uneven playing field between cryptos and banks. So that, in the long and the short of it, that's two of the bills, which I think are unnecessary. The third one deals with crypto and prohibits the U.S. Federal Reserve from issuing digital currencies, which I think is a good thing, because that's all we need is the U.S. government with the means to be snooping and controlling and surveilling our purchases. I mean, can you imagine if we had a digital dollar issued by the Federal Reserve, and of course there would be all kinds of legislative restrictions that they couldn't interfere with private individuals. But do you think the government would follow those laws? The way things are going now, the president could cut you off if he didn't like what you were doing, and he probably would.
Okay, Christian, same question to you. What is the Genius Act? And can you also answer the question, what problem is the Genius Act solving? Was there a problem?
Well, and some good words from my colleague there. He's right about having the Federal Reserve. You don't want the Federal Reserve involved in the issuing of money. First of all, on a retail scale, they're obviously prohibited by law. On a commercial scale, Powell did make comments a few years ago that there would be some kind of an advantageous opportunity for the Federal Reserve to do that, but we don't want that. So let's go right to the heart of the question. What is the Genius Act and what's it good for? And then in the short term and of course the long term, because the viability of the act has to be based on what the net results are going to be. So let's talk about those. First of all, it shores up a demand for short-term treasuries in U.S. dollars. And here's how that works. Stablecoins will be regulated by the federal government, which is good. There'll be some limitations on privacy. I mean, they're going to be monitoring things so nefarious and bad actors aren't involved in the transactional process of stablecoins. But putting that aside, the good news about the Genius Act, and it was really well written. There might be some changes I would have done, but overall, it's a very good bill. Because as stablecoins become more and more utilized in everyday payment processing, which is a digital token that has a unique serial identification number so that the buyer and the sellers can always make sure that they're getting exactly what they expect in the number of them, it does create a demand for short-term treasuries because stablecoins have to be backed by one of two things or both, U.S. dollars and two, U.S. treasuries, primarily short-term, in that 3-month, 6-month, even that 1-year period for the duration of the bill. So I love the act and the way it was written. I think Tim Scott and Senator Hager did a great job. There is the Clarity Act, which obviously is the House version, and the House passed Genius. The Clarity kind of adds to the overall understanding of how the regulatory environment is going to be. But the good news is the Genius Act will be wrapped with an anti-CBDC bill that Warren Davidson, congressman from Ohio, was very advocation about and saying that we've got to have this to ensure that they don't take what is now been made into law to the next level, which would be a centralized digital currency, which once you go in a centralized system, that gives the ultimate power to the central bank or whoever that may be. But the Genius Act overall is going to really help in short-term treasury demand, and number two, shoring up the dollar from a demand standpoint.
Okay, Steve, we'll get to central bank digital currencies a bit later, but on the Genius Act, do you think it's going to more legitimize stablecoins? That's in the eyes of traditional financial institutions.
Yes.
Would you like to elaborate on why you think so?
Well, it gives a good housekeeping seal of approval to stablecoins. I don't think it's necessary. I think the whole thing is rubbish that's just been paid for by the crypto lobby to get an, shall we say, in a way, an unfair advantage relative to commercial banks in the United States. But you asked a question and I answered it. Yes, I think having a defined set of rules governing whether you like the rules or not, or whether you think they're necessary or not, is a separate issue. You asked the question, would this encourage, and it will encourage, and we know this, by the way, because who paid for the legislation? Who poured the money into Congress to do this? The crypto lobby. Who poured a tremendous amount of money into Trump's campaign for president? More than any other single group, it was the crypto lobby. So why do you think Trump is wasting his time peddling crypto? Well, he's making a lot of money, and his sons are making money off of it. I guess that is an incentive to do it. But this is really a third world kind of activity going on, having politicians involved in all this stuff. This is not really what you find this kind of thing in Africa.
But Steve, let me follow up on what you just said. What are your thoughts then on the ban on congressional profiteering? There's a ban in there from stablecoins.
That's true. And do you think it's going to work?
Well, I'm not an expert, but you can tell me if it works or not in your opinion.
They have all kinds of rules about insider trading in the U.S. Congress, and it happens every second. I mean, they're front running every piece of legislation going through Congress is being front run by all kinds of people who have leaked information about what's going on and are in many cases either the members of the U.S. Congress or relatives of members of the Congress. This has been going on blatantly for all kinds of since the U.S. Congress began. So, yeah, there's something in the legislation to deal with that supposedly, but you know, if you believe in that, you got to be believing in the tooth fairy.
Well, Christian, what do you think the ban on profiteering from stablecoins?
Well, there was a lot of conversation right there. There's about 3 different topics I like to address. But your point is I think that the lobbying by the cryptocurrency industry, Steve's correct. There was a lot of lobbying. We're not going to say there wasn't, because what the cryptocurrency lobbyists or the lobbying of said legislation that obviously came through with the Genius Act. Let's take a step back for 1 second. We all know that the Federal Reserve had been working behind Congress's back for about 7 years to develop and create a centralized currency. Now, they were able to determine and to justify that because the Federal Reserve, under Powell's own testimony, and I've done a lot of work for Congress and to bring this attention to them, was under the Hamilton Project, where they determined that commercial banking, or at least a commercial viable central bank digital currency, was not usurping Congress's authority. This is a fact. There's white papers that go all the way from Amazon to Citi to Visa to MasterCard that have confirmed that there was a coalition of people behind the scenes to create a centralized digital dollar. See, the difference, though, when the Bankers Association, who I met with one of their top executives, with one of the leading members of the House, in fact, he was a chairman of one of the committees, and he did say that the Fed Now platform, which was released by the Federal Reserve as a better way of which the commercial banking industry could bring their clients and do systematic payments transactions and even asset management through the Federal Reserve. So the commercial banks were told, oh, go to Fed Now, send us all your business, we'll do the transactions. And what that really was, in the words of one of the co-founders of Ripple, which is the XRP token, which is actually the backbone for central bank digital currencies globally, said the Fed Now was a gateway that had Kamala Harris won. We were going to issue a central bank digital currency. Fast forward, here's President Trump saying, no, that's not going to happen. So as much as the crypto industry lobbied President Trump, they weren't doing it just from a profiteer standpoint. Yeah, there's obviously going to be motivation in anything we do to make money. And maybe Trump's children do have an interest in crypto because it is a good asset to have. That is not the motivation. The motivation was one of three things, Don. I'm going to make sure it's very clear. Number one, we had to bring crypto to the 21st century into the United States. We had to be the regulatory authority in order to be able to stabilize what stablecoins were going to do and not have nefarious actors out there take advantage of Africa or South America doing it. No. The United States has always been a leader in the innovation and the regulatory of new ways of which technology rolls out. So Trump took the stance, I've got to do this. Senator Hagerty said, I've got to help do this. David Sachs, all of them did this. And what is it doing now? Now we have the framework to be able to put forth a crypto policy that's not only going to help the US dollar, it's going to help short-term treasuries that could lower interest rates without having to have the kind of the dueling between Powell and Trump and all that kind of stuff, which may or may not have been good lowering the rates. This will help. But what it really did, it put the Federal Reserve on notice. We know what you were up to. You can't do it. We took the automatic, proactive, precautionary measures to put legislation through so we control it, not a third-party non-government agency of the Federal Reserve under the Hamilton Project. I know this because I addressed members of Congress for 4 or 5 years. We worked on this to determine what they were doing and what was the best course of action to go around what would have been a centralized currency. Yeah, that's called programmable money. Like what Warren Davidson, Congressman from Ohio, said a few days ago on the House floor, you don't want communism when it comes to your monetary policy of any kind. Communism in any form is bad, let alone your money. So this Genius Act is the first step to do the framework of regulatory environment, still maintaining consumer privacy, and it's a win for the United States debt market because now they're going to have a form of backstopping. And don't be surprised if it becomes a PAC stablecoin in the future, and that could be a gold-backed stablecoin here in the United States. That would really shore up the dollar and send treasuries, interest rates dropping and treasuries skyrocketing.
Okay, Steve, so building off of what Christian said about central bank digital currencies and communism, Steve, is it fair to say that CBDCs are more compatible with authoritarian systems like that of China than democratic ones?
Well, it gives number one, I'm opposed to central bank digital currencies. End of story. So Christian and I are on the same page when it comes to that issue. And the reason for that, there are many reasons, but the main reason is that you've got the surveillance state watching every transaction that you're making, and if they don't like what you're doing, if they don't like what the fact that Christian is buying a new Mercedes, they press a button and all of a sudden he's dead. He's not going to be able to buy anything. So it is compatible, as you put it, with a authoritarian or a dictatorial kind of regime. But it also means that even in the United States, where you might, if you had a digital central bank currency, you would certainly have restrictions on the surveillance aspect that the government could impose written into law. But along the theme that I was talking about earlier, do you think the president or the Fed would honor the law and follow the law? And as I said before, you've got to be dreaming. I mean, you'd have to be believing in the tooth fairy. I mean, right now, for example, I can't imagine if we had a centralized digital currency, Trump, the way he thrashes around and goes after people he doesn't like, I can't imagine that he wouldn't be cutting them off. Even though it might be illegal, he'd do it anyway.
Well, gentlemen, we have to leave the conversation here because we're out of time. Thank you both for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Great to be with you.
Gold has nearly doubled in just 5 years, rising from $1,700 an ounce in 2020 to over $3,300 today. That's a 95% gain, outperforming the market and proving why gold is the ultimate long-term hedge. As global debt soars and currencies weaken, central banks are hoarding gold at record pace. Why aren't you? At Hard Asset Management, we offer award-winning service and fast, secure delivery. Call 844-426-4653 or visit bmcham.com. Protect your future with real assets. Own gold now. Follow on X at BMC_HAM for all news and the latest developments.